there. I see Bragança. I see Lisboa. I'm looking for more names. So if you can pop in the chat box where you are in Portugal, that would be great. I should warn you that every time I see a place in Portugal, I think of the great food. So I may get hungry during this session. I also should confess that Sonia is here, that yes, I want to help Portuguese teachers. And yes, I think this book is great. But the main reason I'm doing it is the Cozida Portuguesa. Anyway, everyone, it's great to talk to Portuguese teachers again. I am here, if you probably don't see, I am doing this from sunny Oxford, sunny but cold Oxford. And I'm going to be talking about project work and Harmonize today. Now, I would like to say that once I'm doing the presentation, I don't see the chat box and I don't see you. So Sonia will keep me informed. If you have any questions, please pop them in the chat box. There is some space in the presentation for questions. So please, it's very important to be interactive and for this, for this session to be useful to you. I see Sophia from Ponte de Lima. Oh, the wine to go with that Cozida Portuguesa is coming to me. Okay, let me quickly go on to the session before I forget. Okay, let me see. Okay, let's share my content here. Share the screen. Okay, entire screen. And we always hope that
it's working.
Okay, and everybody can see that. Sonia, can you just confirm for me that it's okay?
Perfect.
Okay, everyone.
So, let's do it. Good luck, Ferry.
Thank you. Thank you, everybody. Let's start with, okay, so I'm going to talk about Harmonize for the 5th year. Specifically, this session is about the project work within Harmonize and how Harmonize will help you do project work. I also want to connect this to the Portuguese syllabus. And I want to talk to you. Yes, I want to promote Harmonize, but I want to take it from a point of view of how does it help you. So you will see my email address there. Please feel free to contact me. And if you have any questions after this session, that is absolutely fine. And let me get going here. So I wanted to start with this because I got this about 1-2 weeks ago. And it just proved to me what I already knew, especially in Europe. I would like to say that I'm showing the map of Europe. This is the English Proficiency Index for around the world. You can see that it's a ranking of 113 countries. Can I say that among those 113 countries, Portugal is in the top 10? Okay. In Europe, you can see that Portugal is in blue along such countries that are known for speaking English very well, like the Netherlands, the Nordic countries, Germany, Austria. Again, notice that Portugal stands out in blue next to Spain, France, Italy, etc. And I put that on here to say I started my career in EFL in Portugal 40 years ago, by the way, this year. So I arrived in Portugal in 1984 to start teaching English. And I have always felt that Portuguese teachers and Portuguese students had a high level of English. They were demanding and they learned well and they could learn better. Okay. And I think that this English Proficiency Index, okay, comes to show what I have always believed, especially as you see the other countries around Portugal. So on that basis, I have always felt that the course books should help teachers teach well and should help students learn better. Let's see how we're going to do this through Harmonize, okay, in relation to project work. Okay, so it is always important for me of why me? Why am I the one giving this session? What makes me an expert or the person that you should take your time after a busy day to listen to me? Well, first of all, can I say, as I have mentioned, I do have 40 years in EFL as a teacher and a trainer. That's mostly in Portugal, about 15 years internationally. I usually like to say that I have been from Peru to Taiwan and a lot of places in between. So those 40 years talking to teachers, but especially talking to students, has given me an expertise, if you will. I'm starting to use that word more and more. Okay, I am a recognized trainer by the Portuguese Ministry of Education, and I have taught in Portugal. I have traveled from the Algarve to the Minho, the Azores, Madeira, not only for the food, but mostly. So I'm aware of the situations in the classroom and the difficulties, the challenges that can come up with any challenge that is usual in schools. So I have taught in primary schools, and as well as language schools. That is very important, I think, because in a language school, a student is there only for the language, only to learn English. And that motivation is different from being in a primary school where English is a subject amongst many subjects. So many of my students, when I taught in primary, they didn't want to learn English to speak. They wanted to learn English to get a good mark. English was a subject like maths or science or Portuguese. And that made a difference to their motivation. That made a difference to the effort they put into the class and to their expectations. Okay. I have taught all levels, all ages. I like this. My youngest ones were about 2.5 years old. When I taught the class of 2.5, 3-year-olds, half the class was in diapers. By the end of the class, none of them were in diapers. I'm not saying it was my English class, but you never know. But I have taught all the way to adults at university level. And I am a qualified primary teacher in the UK. So I am used to, at the moment, I work with UK schools at primary level. So I'm used to working with difficult students, students who are not motivated. And finally, I just love talking to Portuguese teachers. I miss it. I've been in the UK now 12 years since leaving Portugal, and I am very happy to be back. Okay, so let's go on based on that. Some of the questions that I want to answer today. One, why do project work? Okay, why should we even do it? Is it worth it? Secondly, how does it help students learn? That's key because we want what we do in the classroom to help students learn better. Why do the extra work if there's not some extra benefit? And what is my role as a teacher? So as a teacher, what should you be doing during the project work process? So what do you do as students are working during project work? And my goal is to answer these questions. I will have space in here to answer any of your questions, okay? And I want to show specifically how Harmonize helps you to teach and do project work, and it helps students learn. And how does the two connect? Okay, let me start with a background to Harmonize and the context for the project work. So here, these are the components of the course. So we have the student's book, the livro de exercícios. Every once in a while, I will put in some Portuguese. I haven't used Portuguese in a long time, and I do love to use it. Okay, so you have the livro de exercícios. You have the Harmonize project log. Okay, and you have the livre de sort, the teacher's book. There is also a reader. Reading is very important to learn a language. I'm a firm believer in that. And there is also the online practice. Now, this is not a session about Harmonize itself. It's the project work. But I would like to say here that the online practice is important because one of the things that helps students learn top 5 internationally is feedback. When we get good feedback, we learn better. And by having online practice, students get immediate feedback. They don't have to wait to get into class, okay, to correct an exercise. They're getting that feedback as they do it. Okay, so that's a very important aspect for learning. These are the components of the course. Again, Sonia mentioned Anna Louise. This is a comment that she made about Harmonize. And she said, these documents provide comprehensive insights into the evaluation process. And this is the part that I found very satisfying, reaffirm the exceptional quality and suitability of Harmonize 5 for the English language learning and teaching in Portuguese schools. I didn't translate this, by the way. She wrote it in English to Oxford University Press, and that's from the Universidade de Coimbra. So, so taking the question of, does Harmonize meet the requirements of the Portuguese program and the Portuguese syllabus, you can see that it does. But I want to go further than just Harmonize meets the syllabus. Remember, one of our main questions is, how does it help you? So in Harmonize, there are 8 units. Okay, these are the 8 units. You can see here as a context the 8 units, how the topics. Okay. But most important, those topics start with vocabulary, okay, going on to grammar, reading, listening, speaking, writing, and at the end of that process, the project. But the project, and I think this is very key, the project does not only come at the end. It's not a matter of doing the unit and the project is an extra at the end that can be forgotten or that it is simply an extension. If you notice below each unit, that project work is being built page by page by page by page by page until we get to the end where we put it all together. So here, the first thing that is very important is project work is organized for you. It gives you a format, a layout of how you are working with it as you work through the units. And I will explain this better in a little bit. So that gives us the context of where the projects and the project work comes from. Okay, so these are the projects in Harmonize 5. You can see there are 8 projects. I'm going to talk specifically about the first one, just to use that as an example. You can see that there is a mixture here of more traditional projects, making a board game, for example, and there is the technology here also. So you can see that project number 4 is a group video about the school. You can see project number 7 is a podcast about a shopping place. Now, I would like to say that this is, this is flexible. When you make a digital photo album, this is flexible. I always like to tell teachers that, and this is for myself also, I'm not a computer teacher. Okay, I'm not a computer technology teacher. So I don't want to take a lot of time to learn how to make a digital photo album and then to make one so it improves my English. So always keep that in mind, that it is not your responsibility necessarily to help your students do that digital technological part. Remember that they can help you. They probably know a lot about the technology. And remember, there's probably someone in your school that you can put together sort of a CLIL type situation where they help you with the technology and you help your students with the English. This meets one of the aprendizagens essenciais. Okay? And if you can look at the competência estratégica, utilizar a literacia tecnológica para comunicar e aceder ao saber em contexto. So the idea of that literacia tecnológica, I put those in bold, again, is integrated into the project. I was just thinking as I pronounced and read that in Portuguese, I don't know if any of you are smiling at my Portuguese pronunciation, but please keep in mind, I haven't spoken Portuguese in months, maybe even a year. Okay, so again, notice that the project work here is connected to those aprendizagens essenciais. Okay, so moving on from there, okay, the project work takes the teacher step by step. So you can see that the project work automatically shows up in the unit objectives for each unit. And there are usually 5 steps, okay, for each project work that you can work through the unit. So here we know we're going to make a group collage, okay, and a favorite people and things. The first step will be to choose topics. The next step will be describe interesting people. Notice how easy the first step is, choosing topics for your collage. So it starts comfortably, it starts easily. It gets students involved from the very beginning and builds up that motivation by the time we get to the end of the unit. As we work through that project, we are working on the language. So in this case, we're going to be working on nationalities and personal objects. We're going to be working on the verb to be, and we're going to be working on question words. That language will be part of the project. And one of the things I like about projects is that projects give your students another way to show that they know English and that they can learn English. Not all students learn in the same way. Not all students are comfortable taking tests. And a test may not show that they know the English, but a project is a way for you to take their project, their English, their effort, their work, and show, but wait a minute, look, you got this and you use this. And I'll show you how to do that a little bit more specifically as we go through this presentation. Okay. So how do the projects and the units work together? I'm just going to pause here and ask if there are any questions. Sonia, am I still okay?
You are super, and there are no questions.
Okay, great. I'm going to assume that no questions means I'm being pretty clear, but please, everyone, feel free to ask any questions.
Just compliments.
Okay. Oh, okay. That's good. Right. Yeah, I'm sorry I can't see those. Okay, so an important question here. How do the projects and the units work together? This is very important for me because, you know, as a teacher, I don't have a lot of free time. Okay. We are very busy. And as teachers, there's a lot to do before we even arrive in class. And there's a lot to do after the class. There's administrative work. So project work for me cannot be something that adds to my workload. It's something that needs to be integrated, works together, and makes my life easier. I don't need things to make my life more difficult. So how do the units and the project work together? So I mentioned that I am going to talk about Unit 1, but in Unit 1 is the same for Unit 2, 3, 4, and 5. It's still 5 steps. So you can see here for Unit 1, it's called Our Favorites. We're going to be talking about the verb to be. We have the unit objectives that I showed you with the language here. We're going to be those lesson objectives of learn vocabulary for different topics. We're going to be working through this part of the unit, but look at the bottom as we finish that. We have our first project builder. So we're going to ask our students to choose topics for their group collage. I also like to make a little bit of an aside here, and that is that it usually we assume project work is in groups, and it is better in groups, and it meets the Portuguese requirements for group work, etc. But not all my students work well in groups. Not all my classes were used to working in groups. So again, this project work will come unit after unit after unit. So if group work is something you need to build into your classes for your students to get used to it, then the work in Harmonize will help you do that, and take it slowly. Start individually first and then work them into groups. The key here is all they have to do in the first part is choose the topics they're going to put in their collage, okay? And then as we go into this 1.2, now we are talking about where are they from. We're going to learn about nationalities. We'll work through the vocabulary. There are various exercises that we're going to work through. And as we work through the vocabulary, as we work through the grammar, notice at the end again, we're building onto our project. And now we're going to describe interesting people for the collage. We've already chosen those people. We've already chosen those topics. I'll talk about how you can keep your students on task and not get behind in a minute. But again, you'll notice that that project builder, that project is there at the end as you work through the book. So it's the end of every 2 pages. And as we go to 1.3, here it is again, project builder number 3, always at the end. Notice we are building a routine for our students, okay? And as we go to 1.4, there's that project builder. I will get more specific on what those mean. And as we get to the end of the unit, we have project builder number 5. Notice that now it says write descriptions of people. We are beginning to use more and more language. The key that I wanted to show here is that the project work is built into the units together. Okay, it is part of the unit. It guides you and supports you, and we're going to show how that is done even more specifically. But it's not an extra that you have to deal with. How do I do this for different students, for a class of 25, 30 students? Okay, so as we get to the end of the units, we have 2 pages specifically for the project, and that will help you organize that project. It is always the same for every project. Share and review, decide, create, present, reflect. That as they have done the projects, that is what they will do at the end of each unit for each project. So they share and review the work they have already done. They start to decide, okay, what they're going to put in their project, what they're going to take out, how much room. They have to make a lot of decisions before they actually create the project. Put it on a board, put it on a paper. So they have made decisions that will make the next step easier. And of course, they're going to present their project. Now, it is always important to present the project, because the presentation gives them an audience. They are not doing the project for the teacher to be graded. They are doing the projects for an audience, usually themselves. So if they're making a video, try to put the video I've always used the cafeteria when they were having lunch, a slideshow, a poster, so the whole school can see it. One of the schools I worked in had a projector as students came into school, and on that projector would be one of our projects. But it is always interesting that presentation, when students know the audience is not the teacher, they work harder on correcting their mistakes, okay, making it agreeable, because it's their friends who are going to see it, not just the teacher. And then at the end of that, of course, there is reflect, thinking about the work that they have done. Now, when we're talking about reflect, okay, we also go, in this case, we go to the project coach, okay? And this is a video, you can see an example here. And this is a video that will help you and will give you some ideas, okay, on how to make the project better. So in this case, you will see here, Jake is saying that using captions in your project. So he will tell you that don't say this is a hat. Or he will say, don't say this is a yellow, green, and blue hat, because I can see that. See that your caption has English that adds information. So this is my favorite hat. It's a birthday present from my sister. Okay, so now that's not something we would know. Now, I recommend that you can show, obviously, the language is made in a way that your students should understand. But if your students, and some of your students are like mine, just someone speaking in English and they have to listen can be fast, can be intimidating. But the project coach works well for you also as a teacher. Your role as a teacher, when they are writing the captions, you can look at the project coach, those videos, and say, oh, I know this is a hat. Tell me something I don't see. And then that encourages them to get English that is very communicative, okay? Then I also want to say, again, relating back to those aprendizagens essenciais, okay? And that is trabalhar e colaborar em pares e pequenos grupos. So at the end, we reflect, but it says here, we can plan a group collage. We can choose or draw pictures, but you can add to those or even change it. Instead of saying we can choose or draw pictures, you may change that and say, we sabemos como esperar a nossa vez. Okay? Okay? Sabemos ou conseguimos ouvir os outros e refletir criticamente. Okay? Entender e seguir instruções. And I just noticed my computer made a mistake on instruções. My computer is not very good at Portuguese. I have to get a new computer, but I'll have that corrected. But my point here is you can add things from the aprendizagens essenciais into that reflection and meet those requirements even more. Okay, and this is directly from the aprendizagens essenciais. Okay, now let me pause here a little bit before I see how is each project organized. Okay, so let me pause here a little bit, see if there are any questions about the book, about how project work is organized so far, and if you have any other questions, you may have comments about my Portuguese pronunciation. Sonia, can I ask you, are we okay?
We are 100% okay, and no comments about your pronunciation.
Fantastic. Great. I'm going to take that as a compliment. I'm a little bit better than my computer. Okay. So now let's go toward that question of what is your role as a teacher? Okay. What do you do? Okay. As your students are working. When I do my teacher training, this is always a difficult part for teachers. So they're working, they're writing their tests, they're doing all this. What am I supposed to be doing? So here's one thing I think you should consider from the beginning. when you look at a unit and you look at the work for the project, consider to yourself how much of that work can be done at home and how much of that work needs to be done in class. So maybe the first text can be done at home, but you probably need some class time to look at the text, to organize the text. And if you're doing in groups, they need time to look at each other's text, maybe add some things to it. I'd also like to mention that you want to use the language of the units in their projects. Okay, and I'm going to show you how to do that. So, but a first question for you in organizing the project is how much at home, how much in class, and I'm going to show you that any of the work at home, how you can check that students are actually doing it and are not going to come to you and say, oh, I forgot, etc. Okay, so how is each project organized even more than what I've said? So I mentioned the livre dos exercícios. I mentioned the workbook. Okay. At the back of that workbook is the Harmonize project log, which is part, okay, of the components for this course. Okay. So the students will have this log. What does it look like? Okay. There will be a page specifically there on how to use the project log. I will take you through that now, but there is the page in the actual log that will help you, and you can see the arrows that it will help you to take the project builder to the log and in using the language. But let me show you what that means. So at the end of the workbook, there is the idea of log it 1, log it 2, etc. You can see here the project. Make a group collage of your favorite people and things. So we know that is our first project. And if I can skip ahead here, you can see that there will be log it 1, log it 2, log it 3, log it 4, and log it 5. In other words, a log for each step that we have found in our units. So as you're working through the unit, there is something for students to do, okay, in their project log. And that is very important because that means you can ask for their project log. You can look at the page, in this case, project log page 4, and you can see if they have put their topics in or not. Many of my students in doing project work would not do the beginning work. And they would think like, oh yeah, I'll think of the topics later. Oh yeah, oh, I forgot. It's such an easy step. And it takes only about maybe 2-3 minutes, especially for the good students, that it is very easy for them to forget. But what that means is as they go to step 2 and step 3, okay, it becomes more confusing and they don't use as much English as they could. So when they are doing the log it 1, they're already thinking about the topics they're going to use. And they're thinking of colors or nationalities or hobbies or whatever language they have learned in those pages related to the topic. So as we go from from log it 1, log it 2 to log it 3, notice that we are now asking for more English. So the English starts building little by little. So the idea of the beginning is to introduce students comfortably into the project and the language. So notice that log it 1 doesn't ask for much except the topics. Log it 2 starts a little bit more English, but notice how the grammar is there. So I can say that so-and-so, Cristiano Ronaldo is my favorite football player. He is simply fantastic. Okay. And the grammar is there. I'm just adding the topics. So it is a comfortable introduction to projects, and it shows the students that the English they are learning is to be used about themselves. Now, I'd like to say here a little bit of a story. I remember a student And I would ask my students, what did you do this weekend? And my favorite student is made up, but Nunu would always say, "Oh, teacher, I play football." Now, the grammar is not correct, but it's okay. I understood, and I would say, "Oh, great, you played football. Where did you play football?" And Nunu would think, and he would say, in the park. Oh, great, in the park. There is a park near your home. Did you win or did you lose? And Nunu would think and say, "Oh, I win, teacher. I win." Yeah, great. And Nunu, do you usually play? And by the time I'm into my third, fourth, or fifth question, Nunu is rolling his eyes and he says, teacher, it's not true. It's just a sentence. And I thought, well, why give me that sentence? Students are used to using language because of what the teacher expects, but not necessarily language that communicates anything. So Nunu knew what I wanted. He gave me the sentence that I wanted. He played football. Okay. And I should have been happy because he used English. He didn't expect follow-up questions. Here's my problem. When Nunu said, "I played football," it meant nothing to him because he hadn't played football. So the language he was using didn't have any meaning. That's going to change in our project work. Because when you say, "Cristiano Ronaldo is my favorite football player," it should be true. You should know that he is number 7. You should know that he is playing in Saudi Arabia right now. You should know he plays for the national team. When the information is true, there is a lot of language you can use to communicate about it. When it's not true, you don't have anything else to communicate. Okay, so the project work builds that communication. It encourages students to use the English you are teaching them in order to communicate things about them. And that is your role. They know what they want to say. You are there to help them say it correctly. That's when they need you or other students to help them with their English. Mistakes will be normal. That's why we're taking it step by step. And as we build from number 1 to number 2, number 3 asks for a little bit more. Number 4 starts asking for a little bit more. And by the time we get to number 5, we are actually writing a description of people and things I like. But to get here, we have built 4 steps before that. Okay? And I would recommend with your students in class, have them share what they have done before. Because as they share, as they simply look at each other's books, they get ideas. So maybe someone didn't want to talk about football. They wanted to talk about movies, or they wanted to talk about bands, or somebody used not a famous person, but someone in their family. And another person in class says, "We can use our friends, we can use our family. Can I change?" As they share the information with each other, then they can change and learn from each other. And you are there to help them. So notice again here, as they work through the groups, as they work through each log, okay, we are again meeting the aprendizagens essenciais, okay? Trabalhar e colaborar em pares e grupos, okay? Yes, it's bothering me that I see the mistakes in Portuguese. But can I say, I am feeling pretty good that I noticed there are mistakes. I didn't know my Portuguese was good enough to even notice. But Stratégica needs that accent. And Competência needs the little hat. I don't know the name for the little hat. I'm sorry. Okay, but going back, we are working through the groups. We are working through the projects, and that meets one of the aprendizagens essenciais. And notice that we're working on it step by step. By the time students get to log 5, they've done a lot of work. They probably have their project almost all set. That's when you get to the end of the unit and you put it all together and you want to see it, that board, that piece of paper that they're going to show, that collage, okay? Now, Then we get to the reflection. And that is very important because remember, we're going to have 8 projects. So students will notice what they can say, what they have they done well. And one of the things I do when I do the reflection is they not only reflect, now I can do this, okay, but have the other members in the group reflect on the other's work. Have them reflect and judge each other. You probably in year 5, you'll need to teach them how to be constructive, how to be positive. This is not a criticism, etc. How do we work in a group, okay, and be constructive? Because we have another project when we go to Unit 2. By the end of the year, we're really building that idea of trabalhar, colaborar em pares e grupos. Okay? And that's a process. It's not something that we know how to do. And that is part of their learning. And that is part of the aprendizagens and the perfil do aluno that I find so very important in the Portuguese program. Now, as I mentioned, I've traveled around the world, and the Portuguese national program is far-reaching. It is demanding. It is fantastic. It is perfect for a country like Portugal. Okay, but that's another topic for another day. Let me go through here. Okay, as we are working through this, I also wanted to bring in Bloom's taxonomy here, the idea of how we learn and the steps. As you work through the unit, the students are remembering the vocabulary. They're learning that vocabulary. Then they are understanding that vocabulary. They understand the text. They understand the sentences. They understand what the words mean. But the key here when we do project work is they are applying what they have learned in a communicative context. They are using the language they have learned to build a collage that they will show their friends in the school, not only in their classroom, but I would highly recommend in the school. And when they are doing that, okay, they are communicating information about themselves. It is great when I hear a student looking at a project, turning to another student and saying, I didn't know you liked that, or I didn't know you did that. That's when you know that communication is real, okay? And remember, if you can, okay, take that communication outside your classroom, okay? Put those collages in the cafeteria. Have the whole school look at them. It will make your students feel good, and it will encourage them to make that project good. And we're going to go back and see how we can build their language. But remember that as they are remembering, understanding, learning the language, that goal is to apply the language. Okay, so how are we doing that unit by unit? So first, we do the actual unit, the exercises in the unit. In this one, we're going to learn vocabulary for different topics. Then, once we learn the vocabulary, we talk about favorite people, we do the exercises, we have the activities in class, the normal teaching of English, we have the project builder where we're going to put all that language together. And then when we do that, we're going to register that in our log. So notice how Harmonize is helping you to build that project, guiding you to build the project. I always find that in an OUP book, when you follow the steps, they have done the pedagogy, the theory that's behind all this, they have put it into practice. Now, I worked at OUP, at Oxford University Press here in Oxford, and I always tell the editors what an amazing job they do to put that theory into practice and guide this teacher through it. I use a lot of the books in my teacher training as examples of good learning and good teaching. So we are, in each unit, we are learning, we are revising. Remember that the project revises the language, and then we are applying that language. And that will happen in Unit 1.2, and it happens again, and it happens in, again, Unit 1.6, etc. And notice that as we are learning and revising, we are learning and revising more language. So log at number 5, we are applying more language. We've built up that language. What I'm going to recommend here is, as your students are writing, notice that we have done this unit by unit. So your strong students, they've written something about the people that they like, and you look at it and you say, that's okay. And then tell them to go back to Unit 1.5 and use 2 words from there. Choose some words from there. Tell them to go to, there was something in Unit 1.4 I think you can include there. So because it goes unit by unit, as they are completing their log, you can tell them, I'd like you to use at least 5 of the words from this list. Or do you notice this text? I'd like you to have a similar text. And you can do that not only for the students that you challenge, but also for the students that need support. When they forgot the vocabulary, when they say Cristiano Ronaldo, good player, and forget the verb, go back to the page where they're completing that and show them, and they can correct themselves. So that project work and that unit is building so that they are using the language. And in that way, in each one of your classes, as you're working on project work, you are also working on mixed ability. Each student, each group is writing their own text at their own ability. At this point, again, I would like to emphasize, if they look at each other's work, they learn from each other, they add more sentences from each other. Okay. So as I am aware of the time, and I'm aware that you've been working all day. Let me just now take it to the aprendizagens essenciais, the articulação com perfil dos alunos. Notice my computer is learning now better. It does have the little hat on competência, and it has estratégica. So my computer gets better also. So how do we do this? So we have the competência comunicativa as part of the working in the units of learning English. We have the competência intercultural with separate units in Harmonize about intercultural aspects of English around the world. In the competência estratégica is when we get the actual project work, language, and interaction for that. And let me show you within that, in those competências, okay, we have comunicar eficazmente em contexto. Okay, so the project work gives them a context, okay, for the language that they are using. In this case, they're doing a collage, okay, to communicate to their friends. Now, I would say, especially your better students, have them try to communicate something that their friends probably don't know. That makes their work more interesting to both do and to also see and learn and read when they actually display it. Okay, we have, as I've already mentioned, trabalhar e colaborar em pares e pequenos grupos. Remember, take this wherever your students are. This is a goal. This is a process. I find too many times when I am teacher training and people talk about group work, teachers assume that students should be able to work in groups automatically without any effort. That's not true. Our educational system is very much based on working individually. Okay, so to work in groups and to collaborate in groups is a skill that they need to learn. So be kind to them and guide them through it. Okay, and we've talked about the technology, de utilizar a literacia tecnológica para comunicar e aceder ao saber em contexto. So we are using the technology, okay, to communicate, okay, in context. It is not our role to be technology teachers, but to use the technology they know and will probably motivate them. Okay? To think critically, pensar criticamente. And that comes from the reflection of each project. Did I do well? And when a student I've had students looking at other students' projects and thinking, oh, I forgot to put that, or I forgot to do this. It's not a problem. When they learn that, hey, they're going to have another project in Unit 2. And maybe they're going to ask their friends for help, and they're going to look more because it is a process. So they are thinking critically, reflecting. Oh, I forgot to use that word, or I could have used that. Okay? And then, relacionar conhecimento de forma a desenvolver a criatividade. Okay? So you want them to be imaginative. You want them to be creative. These are not works for the teacher to correct, put a mark, and forget. These are works to display, to collaborate, to communicate to others through a collage. And then desenvolver o aprender a aprender. Okay, that learning to learn. O aprender a aprender. I love saying that. Em contexto de sala de aula, aprender a regular o processo de aprendizagem. In other words, in year 5, I know they're very young and they're probably not used to doing this. But the more you ask them, how well do you think you're doing? How good was your project, do you think, on a 1 to 10, on a 1 to 5? Have them thinking, are you learning well? Look at your units. Was there something in the units that you could have used in your project and you didn't use and you could use maybe next time? But my students at this age are not very good at doing that. Okay. And so it takes me a little time to say, reflect. What do you think? It's not only me. So it's very easy for students to leave that to the teacher. But put that question back to them. How do you think you are doing? When we are involved and engaged in our learning, when we have opinions about our own learning, we can adapt more easily. Okay. So you can see how in working through projects, okay, it helps you to meet those competências that are part of the Portuguese National Program. You will be doing it automatically on a unit-by-unit basis because the work is there within the units. Now, if we go back, as I get to the end of my session, if we go back and we look at our questions, so we do project work, in my opinion, we do project work because it gives the students an opportunity to revise and apply the English that they have learned. It sums up that unit, not with a test, but with a project that allows them to make mistakes, correct their mistakes until they are ready. And they're going to correct and do that project well with your support. So it helps students learn because it gives them a context to use the language that they are learning. So if you want a student, let's imagine that you've done a unit and it includes colors and the student used one color in their text, blue. And you might want to go back and say, can you use 2 or 3 more colors? Can you tell me about a profession? Can you use 2 or 3 more profession? I want 2 or 3 more adjectives. Look at this list on page 34. Can you use 3 of those words? The projects give students an opportunity to learn and use, okay, that language, and it gives you an opportunity, mixed ability with each student. Your weakest student, you praise them for the English they have used. Your other students, you can say, can you give me 1 or 2 more sentences? Your better students, you can say, tell me something about, but all that language is within the units. So your role as a teacher is guided, okay, and supported by the work in Harmonize because it's taking you step by step, building that project, both what you expect from your students and what they are meant to do at the end of 1.2, 1.3, and so on. Okay. Now I'm going to stop there. I want to thank everyone very much for being here, taking your time after, I'm sure, a busy day at work. I want to thank you for the compliments related to my Portuguese. I will make those corrections. And if you have any questions, I will now stop sharing my screen. And if you have any questions, please, I will be here to answer them. Okay, let me stop sharing my screen here. Okay, there we go. And I am back. Okay, there we go. Hello, Sonia.
Very well. So if you have any questions, please just text in the text box regarding the books. Thank you, Teacher Maria. Teacher Maria is saying that she loved it. So we are still waiting for the books because we had special and Portuguese covers. They had to, well, they are still preparing that, but I'm expecting to receive our gratis during this week or the beginning of the next week. However, every teacher that has been here in this presentation will receive a digital code for to access all the resources of the course. Teacher Ines is asking when can she see you in Portugal?
Well, I am happy to say that I will be in the API conference in less than a month. So I will be in the API conference presenting for Oxford University Press. I will be presenting, I should say also, top of my list, my cozida portuguesa. But and because we're going to be in Braga, you know, Horst Cabidela is always in the back of my mind. Anyway, but I will be at the API conference, so I hope I can see you there. Okay.
Okay, so if there are no questions, you will all of you will receive a certificate for attending this session. The teachers that have attended will receive the gratis code for accessing all the materials of the course book. And then you will receive at your schools the physical gratis samples. So from my end, Veríssimo, many thanks. It was a great presentation. Thank you. This is a project-based course book, so it makes all the sense to have all this understanding of the project-based course. So if you don't have any more questions, I would like to thank you all for being here. Thank you so much. Veríssimo, thank you so much. I will see you in Braga. And then we will have a final session with Veríssimo, also with Veríssimo. Meanwhile, we are having other sessions for Harmonize 5 with Radek. Well, with the focus on different aspects of the course book. Okay, so have a good evening, everyone. Many thanks for being here, and see you next week.
Thank you, everyone. Bye-bye. Thank you, everyone.
Thank you. Bye.